Welcome to Threads of Truth, the podcast where real-life mysteries meet internet speculation. Today, we are exploring a case that became the poster child for modern digital obsession, the tragic death of Elisa Lam at the Cecil Hotel.
It's good to be back. In this case, wow, I was looking over some of the initial reports earlier, and it's just staggering how quickly a narrative can set in stone.
A narrative based on really almost nothing. I mean, when we talk about Elisa Lam, we're not just talking about a tragedy. We're talking about one specific piece of evidence.
Video.
Exactly. That grainy 4-minute elevator video. It went viral, and immediately the entire internet decided this young woman was running from a ghost or a killer or playing some bizarre supernatural game.
And that one viral moment, her behavior in that elevator, it became the only lens people used to look at this case. It let all this sensational mythology completely overshadow the really sad and, frankly, scientifically grounded facts of what happened.
And we all know mythology travels a lot faster than the facts do. We've gone through autopsy reports, official police records, court documents.
Right. And our mission today is, I think, a necessary one. It's to respectfully walk through the actual evidence, the forensic findings, and really try to understand how a very private, personal tragedy became this global obsession. We need to dismantle that mythology and try to set the record straight.
Okay, so let's get into it. Let's unpack the facts of the tragedy itself.
Let's do it.
So first, the victim.
Yeah.
We're talking about Elisa Lam. She was a 21-year-old student from Vancouver, Canada. By all accounts, bright, full of promise, and she was traveling alone down the West Coast.
Yeah, a solo trip. And her journey brought her to downtown LA, where she checked into the Cecil Hotel on January 26, 2013.
She was supposed to check out just a few days later on the 31st.
Right. And she was in daily contact with her parents. So when that contact stopped, they reported her missing immediately. And that's when the location itself kicks the story into high gear.
The Cecil Hotel. I mean, you can't write a story with a more notorious setting. The place, which later rebranded to Stay on Main, it's not just a hotel. It's like a landmark of LA's darkest history.
It absolutely is. And that history is central to why this all blew up. The Cecil was infamous for decades, long before Elisa Lam ever set foot in it. We're talking sudden deaths, suicides, violent crime.
And it housed some of the most famous serial killers.
Exactly. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, he lived there in the mid-'80s while he was on his killing spree. The sources say he'd come back covered in blood and no one batted an eye. He was paying something like $14 a night.
And it wasn't just him.
No, not at all. The Austrian serial killer Jack Unterweger also lived there in the 90s. So when Elisa Lam vanished inside that building, the public was already primed to expect something sinister.
Of course. The narrative bias was already there. A tragedy at the Cecil. It has to be evil or paranormal.
You couldn't just be an accident.
Okay, so let's get to the timeline. She disappears on January 31st.
Yeah.
But the thing that really lit the fuse, that surveillance video, wasn't released right away.
No, it came out a couple of weeks later. The LAPD released this 4-minute clip, and they were hoping for tips. You know, maybe someone recognizes her or saw something.
But it did the exact opposite.
It created a tsunami of speculation. The footage is so chilling because on the surface, it just doesn't make any sense.
So walk us through what we're seeing in that video.
Okay, so Lam gets into the elevator. She presses a bunch of buttons, looks like a whole column of them. But the door doesn't close.
And that's the first weird thing.
That's the first thing. She waits, looks a little agitated, and then she starts peering out. She quickly looks left, then right, steps part of the way out, then jumps back in and hides in the corner.
It honestly looks like she's playing hide and seek, or she's terrified of someone who is right outside the door.
That's the ambiguity that hooked everyone. Then she goes back to the control panel, presses a bunch more buttons, maybe in frustration, and then she steps out completely.
And this is the part that everyone talks about, her gestures.
Her gestures. She's outside the elevator, and her hands and arms are moving in this very strange, agitated way. It looks like she's talking to someone or maybe arguing with someone who is just out of the camera's view.
Then she just walks away. And the doors, after all that, finally slide shut.
And you, the viewer, are left with what? A bunch of questions. Who was she talking to? Why didn't the doors close? And in that vacuum, all the conspiracy theories just rushed in.
So the search goes on for 19 days, and on February 19th, her body is found. And the way it was found is, I think, the most macabre detail of this whole thing.
It is. It was completely by accident. It started because hotel guests were complaining.
About the water, right?
Yeah, about low water pressure and that the water coming out of the taps was murky. Some said it had a strange smell, a weird taste.
Oh, that's just horrifying.
So a maintenance worker was sent up to the roof to check the hotel's 4 massive water tanks.
And this worker, Santiago Lopez, his testimony becomes so important later on.
Incredibly important. He's the one who finds her. He goes up to the roof, climbs a ladder on the side of one of the main tanks, looks inside, and he finds her body. She was lying face up in the water, just about a foot from the top of the tank.
Let's just pause on that. For nearly 3 weeks, guests at that hotel were bathing in, drinking, brushing their teeth with water from a tank that contained a decomposing body.
The sheer horror of that one detail is what turned this from a local news story into a global media firestorm.
Absolutely. So, with the body found, the official investigation begins. The LA County coroner moves pretty quickly.
They do. The autopsy report comes out just 2 days later with the final official ruling delivered in June of 2013.
And what was the official manner of death?
This is the part the internet just refused to accept. The coroner's conclusion was clear. Accidental drowning.
Accidental. And crucially, what did they find in terms of physical evidence on her body?
Nothing. Absolutely no evidence of physical trauma. No signs of a struggle, no sexual assault. There was no indication that anyone else was involved.
So no foul play. But an accidental drowning in a water tank on a hotel roof still leaves you asking how and why.
And the coroner's report answered that. It cited her diagnosed bipolar disorder as a significant contributing factor. And that one detail, the fact that this was fundamentally a medical tragedy, just got completely buried under the noise.
The toxicology report must have been critical here. What did it show?
It gave investigators a major clue. First, it confirmed what they suspected. She wasn't drunk, no illicit drugs in her system, nothing like that. But when they looked at her prescribed medications, they found something critical.
The levels were off.
Way off. The report said they were at low subtherapeutic levels.
Okay, for those of us who aren't doctors, what does subtherapeutic actually mean?
It means the amount of medication in her system wasn't enough to actually do what it was supposed to do. It strongly suggests that in the days leading up to her death, she was either not taking her full dose or had stopped taking her medication altogether.
So that scientific fact directly pushes back against all the ghost stories and murder plots. The chaos was internal.
Precisely.
Still, the family pursued legal action, right? They sued the Cecil Hotel.
They did. In September 2013, they filed a wrongful death lawsuit, basically arguing the hotel was negligent for not securing the roof and the water tanks.
And what happened with that suit?
It was ultimately dismissed. In December 2015, a judge threw it out, ruling that the death wasn't foreseeable. His reasoning was that it happened in an area where guests were not allowed to be, and the hotel couldn't reasonably predict that a guest would go to such lengths to climb into a water tank.
Which brings us to the big logistical question that fueled so much of the doubt online. The access paradox. How could she have even gotten up there, let alone into the tank, by herself?
That's the hook. That's what the online sleuths latched onto. Guests were not allowed on the roof. Access was via a fire escape, which was difficult, or through an employee-only door. That door had a keycard lock and was supposed to have an alarm.
Supposed to. Did the alarm go off?
Well, the maintenance staff, including Santiago Lopez, testified that they never heard an alarm, so whether it malfunctioned or was disabled, we don't know. But that failure was the first step. It allowed her to get onto the roof.
Okay, so she's on the roof. But getting into that tank is a whole other challenge.
It's a huge challenge. It's a multi-step, pretty athletic feat. First, she has to climb onto the platform that the tanks are sitting on. Then she has to climb a 10-foot ladder that's attached to the side of the tank itself. And
There's open the lid, the hatch.
Right. And that hatch is a heavy metal lid. It weighed about 20 pounds.
The idea that a young woman, maybe in distress, could do all of that alone in the dark. It's why the murder theory just seems so much more plausible to people.
It seemed impossible for her to do it alone. And that skepticism was then supercharged by this fatal miscommunication about the hatch.
This detail really poisoned the well for the official story, didn't it?
It did, irrevocably. Early on, a police spokesperson told the media that the maintenance worker found the tank lid closed.
Closed.
Closed. And for the public, that was it. Case closed, it's murder. If the lid is closed and it weighs 20 pounds, she couldn't have possibly closed it from the inside. Someone else had to have put her in there and sealed the tank.
But that wasn't the truth.
It wasn't the truth at all. The actual testimony from the man who found her, Santiago Lopez, was crystal clear. He said the hatch was wide open when he got there.
Wow.
The initial police statement was just a horrible miscommunication. They later retracted it, but by then, the damage was done. The murder theory had gone viral, and that one wrong fact was its cornerstone.
So we have the facts.
Yeah.
An accidental drowning, a documented mental health crisis, and the hatch was open. But the public, armed with that video and that initial police error, they just went in a completely different direction.
Completely different direction. The internet became this huge echo chamber for the most outlandish theories. I mean, it went from murder to government conspiracies to the supernatural almost overnight.
Let's start with the paranormal stuff. There was that Korean elevator game theory.
Yeah, that one was bizarre. The idea was that Elisa was performing this online ritual where you press elevator buttons in a specific order to travel to another dimension.
So her strange movements were part of the ritual.
Exactly. Or it was her reacting to some entity she had summoned. It neatly explained her behavior for people who wanted a supernatural answer. And given the Cecil's history, the idea that she was simply hiding from a ghost, the elevator pursuer, that was even more popular.
People were looking for a ghost story, not a medical explanation. The hotel's history with Ramirez and others just fed right into that.
It's a perfect pattern recognition trap. A tragedy happens at the Cecil, so it must be something evil. The simple, sad reality was just unsatisfying.
Okay, let's talk about the wildest one. The Lam Elisa conspiracy.
Ah, yes. This is a masterclass in apophenia, seeing connections where none exist.
So break it down for us.
Okay, so online sleuths noticed that around the time of her death, there was a small tuberculosis outbreak on Skid Row, which is right near the hotel. Then they discovered that a common diagnostic test for TB is called Lam Elisa.
Leuporabinomenan enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay.
You got it. And the name Lam Elisa is an almost perfect anagram of Elisa Lam.
And that was it. That was the proof.
That was the smoking gun for them. The theory was that she was a biological weapon or a government test subject or somehow involved in this TB outbreak. It was this deep, complex conspiracy that explained everything.
But the reality is much more mundane.
So much more mundane. The Lam Elisa test was named in 1971, decades before she was born. It's named for the chemicals it uses. And more importantly, her autopsy report confirmed she tested negative for TB.
But facts don't matter when a coincidence is that juicy.
Never. The name match is just too compelling.
This is why it's so important to go back to the technical details that people misunderstood. Let's go back to the elevator. Why did the door stay open for 2 whole minutes?
The internet saw a ghost holding the doors open or a killer. They saw a malfunction. What they didn't see was a very common feature in older elevators.
The door hold button.
The door hold button. On that specific model, if you press it, it's designed to keep the doors locked open for exactly 120 seconds, 2 minutes. It's for maintenance or for loading luggage.
And since you pressed a whole column of buttons,
She almost certainly hit it by accident. So the whole dramatic delay wasn't a paranormal event. It was a machine working exactly as it was designed to.
that one simple fact just deflates the entire supernatural angle.
Completely.
And what about the other technical claim? That the LAPD edited the video. It does look jerky and slowed down.
It does, and people immediately jumped to the conclusion that the police were hiding something, cutting out frames to hide a killer in the hallway.
But the truth is, just about 2013 technology.
It's just old tech. Security cameras back then, especially in an old hotel, recorded at a very low frame rate. We're talking maybe 1 to 5 frames per second.
Okay.
So when you take that super low quality footage and play it on YouTube at a normal speed, like 30 frames per second, it's going to look choppy and laggy. It looks like it's jumping. It wasn't edited. It was just a bad camera.
So the 2 biggest mysteries of the elevator video are solved by a user manual and an understanding of old cameras.
The unglamorous truth. But by the time these explanations came out, the web sleuths had already turned this into entertainment. This case really marks the rise of that web sleuth culture.
YouTube, Reddit, and later documentaries, they just amplified all these theories.
They did. And a lot of those true crime shows, they don't help. They'll spend an hour indulging every wild theory, lending them credibility, before spending maybe 2 minutes at the end on the actual clinical facts.
It's all about the drama.
It's all about the drama. And you had another layer of pattern recognition happening here, too. The whole scenario, a young woman found dead in a water tank in a creepy building, is almost the exact plot of the Japanese horror film Dark Water.
Which came out in 2005.
Right. So people had this ready-made horror movie script in their heads, and the real-life events fit it perfectly. It made the whole thing feel like a manufactured mystery, not a real tragedy.
And this is where we have to pivot. Away from the internet speculation and toward the hard truth of what was really happening. Because while everyone was looking for a ghost, they were missing the real story.
They were missing the most important thread. Elisa Lam was in the middle of a severe documented medical crisis.
So let's look at that elevator footage again, but this time through a clinical lens. What are we actually seeing?
What we're seeing is a textbook presentation of a severe manic or psychotic episode, which is associated with bipolar I disorder. Her behavior, the hiding, the peering out, the agitated hand movements, it all points to something called psychomotor agitation.
Okay, what is that exactly?
It's a state of extreme physical and mental restlessness.
Yeah.
It comes with intense anxiety, paranoia, and often powerful hallucinations. So to Elisa in that moment, the person or the threat she was reacting to outside that elevator felt 100% real.
She was reacting to something in her own mind, not in the hallway.
Exactly. Her actions were defensive, but she was defending herself from an internal stimulus.
And this brings us back to that toxicology report. We said her medication levels were low. Let's dig into that.
This is the key. The report showed she was taking an antidepressant, Effexor. But the most important medications for her condition, an antipsychotic called quetiapine and a mood stabilizer called lamotrigine, they were either gone or at trace levels.
What does that specific imbalance do to someone with bipolar I?
I can give you a simple analogy. Think of the antidepressant Effexor as the gas pedal in a car. It pushes you forward, gives you energy, lifts your mood.
Okay.
The antipsychotic and the mood stabilizer, those are the brakes. They are the steering wheel. They are absolutely essential to keep the car under control.
So what happens if you're flooring the gas pedal with no brake?
You crash. Taking an antidepressant without the mood stabilizer can actively trigger a severe manic psychotic episode. The chemical cocktail in her system was literally pushing her into the state of paranoia and hallucination we see in that video.
And this wasn't just a theory. There was anecdotal evidence to back this up.
Powerful evidence. Her family told investigators that she had a history of not taking her medication. And when that happened before, she would have hallucinations. They said she would hide under her bed, convinced people were after her. She'd been hospitalized for it.
And the hotel staff saw this behavior escalating.
They did. During the investigation, it came out that she had been leaving paranoid notes for her roommates. She'd been kicked out of a TV show taping in Burbank for being disruptive. At one point, she was apparently in the Cecil lobby shouting, "I'm crazy." It's heartbreaking, but it confirms the state of distress she was in.
So when you put it all together, the history, the medication imbalance, the witness reports, and the behavior in the video, the official conclusion is really the only one that makes sense.
It's the only one supported by evidence. In a state of psychosis, likely terrified of a perceived threat, she fled to the roof seeking safety, maybe seeing the water tank as a hiding place, and tragically accidentally drowned.
It's just so devastating because it's a medical tragedy, not a Hollywood horror movie.
Yeah.
And that's why the global obsession with the mystery feels so disrespectful.
It is disrespectful. It reduces a complex human being, someone who was struggling with a terrible illness, into a puzzle to be solved for entertainment. And when the internet collectively said, "Oh, that's not what mental illness looks like," it just showed a profound and damaging ignorance about what psychosis and bipolar disorder actually are.
And you have to wonder about the police communication in all this.
Yeah.
They chose not to release the mental health details early on.
And you can understand why, to protect the family's privacy. But in a case this big, that secrecy creates a vacuum. And if you don't give an information-hungry public the facts, they will fill that vacuum with fiction.
And the collateral damage of all that fiction. It's just staggering. We have to talk about Pablo Vergara.
The story of Pablo Morbid Vergara is the darkest chapter of this whole saga. He was a death metal musician from Mexico.
And the internet mob just decided he was the killer.
They did. Based on absolutely nothing but the fact that his music was dark and theatrical, And he had stayed at the Cecil Hotel once,
How long before?
a full year before Elisa Lam was there. But it didn't matter. He fit the part of the villain they wanted.
And what happened to him?
He was doxxed. He got thousands of death threats. His music was taken down. His social media accounts were shut down. His entire life and career were destroyed by a baseless accusation.
A psychological toll.
It was immense. He became so depressed and terrified that he attempted suicide and had to be hospitalized.
And there was conclusive proof he was innocent.
Conclusive. There was evidence he was in Mexico recording an album at the time of her death. He was completely exonerated by the facts. But did the mob ever apologize? Of course not. The damage was done.
That story just reveals such a sickness in our modern true crime culture. The speed at which misinformation can ruin an innocent person's life is terrifying.
It really is. This case is a cautionary tale. It shows what happens when we choose wide-eyed gossip over the critical evaluation of facts. The desire for a dramatic story completely overrode our collective decency.
The real tragedy here isn't a ghost in an elevator. It's the loss of a young woman to a medical crisis and the near destruction of an innocent man by a digital mob. That's the story we should be telling.
That's the truth.
The story of Elisa Lam is a devastating tragedy that occurred during a psychotic break, a young life lost amid the painful reality of a severe, misunderstood medical illness. She deserves better than to be remembered only as a symbol of the Cecil Hotel's sensationalized history or as the centerpiece of an internet puzzle.
In this case, it really forces us to look at the difference between seeking truth and just, chasing the story that feels the most satisfying. And sometimes the facts point to a much sadder, much simpler answer. And our challenge is to accept that, even if it's not as entertaining.
That's a critical thought to end on. Thank you for walking through all of this with me today.
My pleasure.
Next time, we'll examine another controversial case involving justice, controversy, and a young man executed amid unanswered questions. We will explore the complexity of institutional failures and the continuing quest for accountability in the pursuit of truth. Until then, remember to always look for the verifiable thread.